Uh, Dick, I'm just turned 79, and we all know each other. I went to Germany from Pennsylvania.
And went to Germany and lived with a wonderful family. I was one of the really lucky ones who had a direct exchange. Their daughter lived with my family and I lived with her. So we had a really close relationship, and we stayed in touch and visited each other over the years.
I'm Janet Patton. I was Janet Brazier, and I lived in a small town in Indiana, Washington, Indiana, but I had the pleasure of having my exchange sister, Chris, live with our family my junior year. And so we were together. We were both only children, so that made it wonderful. So then I went to her house, 58, 59 then, and lived with her and went to school with her, and it was just wonderful.
Well, I was living in Ohio when we went to Germany. I lived in a small village outside of Kassel. And in those days, the Sefer Yot Im and Brethren Church were headquartered in Kassel, and they ran the exchange program out of offices there. I'm still in touch with the family that I lived with. It's like I'm part of their family and they're part of mine. It changed my whole worldview.
Jack Farrell, my story is not too much unlike Bob's. I came from a small town in Ohio and spent my year in a village west of Hamburg. And it, like I said, I think my life's not too much unlike Bob's. It was certainly a life-changing event for me as well.
Sarah, otherwise known as Sally. My maiden name was Fredrickson, which is a Danish name, and my married name is Pratt. And I grew up in Minneapolis and in the States, of course. And I was 80 last September and went across to Denmark.
Cindy Sittler, and I'm maybe the youngest, I guess. I'm 78. So I haven't, I'll be 79 in July. I was from a small town in Pennsylvania, Greensburg. I'm now in Brooklyn, New York. And I went to another small town, Fürstenfeld in Austria.
And we, all of our different parents brought us or whatever. And then we took a bus to New York to get on the boat. I remember one of the buses broke down on the way to New York. And,
I don't remember that.
I do.
Yeah,
You must have been on that bus.
It was all an adventure. We were 15, 16, 17 years old, and none of us, I don't think, had ever been to New York City. And
I had.
we got on a boat and we sailed by the Statue of Liberty, and you could go sit at the bar, and for a dime you could get a 7-Up. I thought I was really cool or sophisticated.
I remember they tried to give us German lessons, those of us who were going to Germany and Austria on the boat, and I had tried to have lessons before I left West Virginia, and of course the need wasn't as great when you're just having somebody come and give you a lesson as it is when you're sitting at the dinner table and you want another piece of meat and you have to learn to say I'd
You
like
got
to
meat?
Bitte.
And I was like you, somebody offered the exchange at church, and I think we were all thinking like that back then, because this wasn't all that long after World War II and AFS was big, and everyone was trying to say we have to figure out how to never do this again after the Second World War.
In my case, I think it's more of a general memory, and it's all associated with family life.
Mm-hmm.
I came from a large family, and yet living with another family that was just one kid bigger than the one I came from. Just the culture and the daily life that the family led was so different from what I knew. And yet I was made to feel very much like a member of the family.
We're sitting on the sofa, and the two little boys walked in the room. The parents weren't there. I didn't speak Danish except about 6 words that my librarian at home had taught me. And of course, they didn't speak English because they were 7 and 10. And they just sort of walked into the room and they kind of looked at me and they had this sweet smile on their faces. And I was looking at them, wishing I could say something, but I couldn't. And it's like this snapshot. It lives in my brain forever and ever. That was then the beginning of the whole rest of the year.
An international driver's license, so I could drive. And we took a trip to Berlin to see my German brother, and they actually let me drive through East Berlin. This little corridor that they had that. And you get stopped by the local police to check, your passports and all the other stuff. So a little scary.
For a specific moment was magical was Christmas and seeing those candles on a live tree. And I think, wow, we would never, ever do that,
And Papa called me back and he said, you must close the door. And I want you to stand there and close the door several times and say, I will close the door, I will close the door, I will close the door. And I thought, oh, he would do this to his own child. And so then I felt like, I was really accepted, that they weren't keeping me special up on a pedestal or whatever. I was truly accepted enough that Papa could tell me to close the door. So the little memories like that pop out.
I went to a private gymnasium, and our class had 20 boys and 5 girls, and several of the boys came from East Berlin. Their fathers were Lutheran ministers, and so Chris and I dated boys from East Berlin, and we were in East Berlin a lot. Of course, this was before the wall, and it was such a special experience. It was really so drab, and I remember sitting with my friend in a park, and all you could smell was the smoke of coal, and it was so drab. A few straggly flowers were trying to bloom, but
family that is the kind of the enduring aspect of the year. I mean, there are many things, but I think it stands out the most, even though, it's like now the next generation that I'm in touch with.
At home, I probably would have taught in either West Virginia or Kentucky, where I'd gone to school. And yet I reached out and went to Connecticut to teach. And then at one point, I after a couple of years, I had a friend who said, I'm going to California. Do you want to go? And I said, sure. And that kind of thing, had I not had the experience as an exchange student and gone to Germany, I'm not sure I would have reached out. I would have dared to do some of, that kind of a thing
But what I learned was how smart and literate and internationally aware and language capable and conversant that Europeans are relative to Americans, even with no car, as you say, no house, which we all mostly thought we had to have. And even the bank president next door had no refrigerator. And so it was like that whole material thing that we thought was necessary just went away.
Completely changed my global view of things. And I saw so much destruction too. And every night the Poppy would drink schnapps and beer and tell me all about his experiences in a prisoner of war camp in England. And they kicked him out because he had tuberculosis. And he virtually walked back to Berlin. And then Mommy told me about her experiences in the war and how they were so deprived too. So whenever I came back and they didn't have a car and my parents picked me up in Canada with their car, I remember sitting in the back seat thinking, this is ours, this big car is ours. And all the things that I had at home, I was just much more thankful for what I had.
Mm-hmm.
I would certainly encourage people to do that. And I think what they're likely to learn or the experience they would have would broaden their worldview just as it did ours. Even
by all means, do it. And I wrote down, be humble. But I would also say the big gift of this year was that it was a whole year, so that we became language proficient, and we not only knew what people were saying to us, we knew what they were saying to each other, and then we were really in the culture. And shorter stays don't allow you to do that unless you're already proficient in the language.
I think learning tolerance and patience and understanding, and I think learning to love people in another country has been a wonderful experience too. And it's not only the experience that you have, but it's like waves. It affects your parents, it affects your relatives, it affects your friends back home. Mm-hmm. And it just broadens everyone's perspective of the world. So I would definitely encourage you to do it. Thank you.
But do it. I mean, you never know what you're going to learn, even about yourself. I think I became a better American by having lived that year in Germany. I appreciated my country more than I think I ever would have.
I would encourage people to, if they're abroad, limit the cell phone use to emergencies or necessities. Don't just, be on Facebook all the time or, all this other social media stuff that can absorb your time, and try to just get involved in where you are, be present and experience what you're doing now, and not, get on your cell phone all the time.
Yeah, just do it. It's wonderful. Just do it. Oh, if everybody had an experience like this and learned to love another family from another country and another culture, wouldn't we be better off? Wouldn't we all get along better in this world if we had those personal experiences like we had? It was very